Okay, so let's start this wrap-up session talking a little bit about some of the news announcements that we have out this week. We saw a little bit of Chinese news on Sunday. Monday has definitely had some news. We had Draghi speak and German flash PMI and the French PMI. And then for Australia coming up, we have the monetary policy meeting minutes. These can definitely be movers, and this is in about 25 minutes. We have a Euro-Aussie trade we're looking at. And we're going to talk about the Aussie dollar as well. So this will be important. The meeting minutes for Australia don't typically move quite as much as some of the other meeting minutes, like the FOMC meeting minutes in the US, for example, can really move the market. The Aussie ones, most of the time, are a little bit on the calmer side, but you never know. So we'll just keep that in mind. That could be a big mover. And that's coming up in, again, about 25 minutes. Tuesday, we have lots of news out on Tuesday. You can see we have core CPI for the US, we have the German ZU, the CPI for the UK, a little bit of central bank news out of Australia on Tuesday. Wednesday is a huge day. This is like the big day for anything dollar related. Now we have definitely some good stuff, unemployment claims for the UK, and then we have interest rates, or excuse me, the vote of rates in the UK. So the asset purchase facility, which is their QE basically, and then this is where they talk about what they want to do with interest rates in some of the coming meetings. So that'll be in the UK. That's a big deal. That can get the pound dollar moving and the pound yen. Any pound pair is moving like crazy. That'll be early. Well, it'll be middle of the night for me anyways. And then middle of the day on Wednesday, or a little bit later anyways, we have the FOMC statement and press conference. This is always a huge deal, and there's a lot of anticipation that some tapering will be announced, that the Fed might just say, you know, we're starting to pull back and so on and so forth. I think it's going to be pretty loosey-goosey. Even if they do announce some stuff, I don't know. It's so. I think they're really going to trickle their way out of this whole thing very, very slowly. Especially the fact that there's going to be a new Fed chairperson starting the year off, and so that'll be a big deal. So I don't know. We'll, as always, we'll be super live and we'll be looking for things to happen. And the market is going to be very anticipating of this news, to the point that things might even be a little bit slow before the news comes out. So just keep that in mind. Might be a little bit of a slow start while we wait for all that Fed news. But we'll be watching. We'll be ready for it. So we'll be live in the chat at 11 a.m. chat time on Wednesday, along with morning and afternoon and so on. And then Thursday we've got some unemployment claims, existing home sales for the U.S., so on, some Japanese news, and then Friday, nothing too crazy happening on Friday. We've got some core CPI and retail sales for Canada, which is always a good one to watch. But just I wanted to give a little quick look at what we have coming up this week. So there's definitely some very super important news out this week. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about the euro dollar and what we have coming up here. By the way, guys, feel free to ask any questions, to make any comments. If there's some pairs you want to look at that maybe I haven't covered or haven't mentioned, just bring them up and I'll look over them and kind of give the best analysis I can. Remember, this will be recorded and it will be posted for everybody to see. So just have a little, you know, remember that there will be time to kind of review some of this stuff as well. Okay, so euro dollar is kind of in this interesting area. You can see this nice little uptrend right here. Our big levels to keep an eye on right now, at least at this point, is 138.30 is a real big level here, 138.30. Kind of this big double top here of 2013, and then we start coming into some big resistance levels and so on here around 13900, and of course the old psychological levels of 140, so I think we'll see 140 get hit. We didn't even see the market get hardly close to 140 last year. The high last year of 2012 was just about 130. We were just shy of 13500 last year, and then this year we've gotten up into the 138. Now, depending on how much the Fed announces and what they talk about and what they end up doing will determine a lot on the long-term picture here, but I think that over the next month or two, we could see euro dollar, you know, hit 140 at least, and maybe even exceed 140 a little bit. I think this could be kind of that time of consolidation where, you know, we've had huge movements and then everything got really quiet for about 2 years, and now we're starting to get some breakouts and some movements again. So I wouldn't be surprised to see the euro get higher than everyone is expecting and anticipating. But the levels to watch right now will be the high, which is 138.30, and then the other thing that we're going to be watching is, at least at this point, right now we have a missed weekly pivot from last week on euro dollar, and that sits at about 136.60. 60-ish, depending on what time frame your charts are, but about 136.60 is our weekly pivot here. So that's about 100 pips below current market price. If we break this high of 138.00 and then ultimately 138.30, this just gets more and more and more interesting, and it turns into a big, fantastic, awesome, excellent target. But here are a couple of things that I'm looking at. I am looking for, if we get a little dip, especially if we reach this 136.60 area, I'm going to be looking for buying opportunities on the euro dollar. I think we'll have some really good ones if we get down into that, and even just right around the lows of Friday. So I'm going to be keeping my eye really close, and I'll be sending out tweets and kind of updating this. I don't know exactly where I want to enter, but somewhere between about 13700 and 136.60. So there's kind of a 40 pip channel in there that I'm going to be watching for, and that's kind of this area right there. Once again, about 13700 to about 136.60. Somewhere along that area, I'm going to be looking for entries on the euro dollar to get long. Now remember, the euro dollar has just kind of been up and it pulls back, up and it pulls back, up and it pulls back. And so we haven't really moved away from a lot of missed daily pivots or weekly pivots. We haven't moved away from the moving average by a bunch. It really hasn't done anything crazy. And so what we have to be careful of and aware of is that it could be ready to do something a little tiny bit more erratic and crazy and so on. So that's why we're looking for anywhere from a 60 to even a 100 pip drop on this thing, and then opportunities to buy that dip. Now there's going to be a few shorter term opportunities to sell this rally, this move up right here, and you can see there's some trend line activity that you can look to trade. And a really short term, you can probably see it's better on like a 15-minute chart, but kind of a little head and shoulders pattern, which if we throw some trend lines in there and kind of see some of that stuff, that could give us kind of a short term trading opportunity on that, again, very short term head and shoulders pattern. So watch that trend line break. I'm not super gung-ho about selling the euro dollar too much. I think it's more of an interesting move to buy that dip, once again, between about 136.60 and 13700, targeting 138.30 and ultimately 13900 and even 140. So I think we have a probably a pretty decent long-term, longer-term move up. I think we could get 300 pips out of a move. If we can get that dip around, 136.60 to 13700. Does anybody have any questions, comments? One thing I forgot about, I don't think we have any major missed daily pivots on euro dollar, unless we do. Oh yeah, we do. We have one right down here. So the more we move away from this is 134.50. That's kind of way the heck down there. So the further we move away from that, 134.50, and ultimately the missed weekly pivot from last week, the better that reversal comes, but likewise the better the momentum of this upside movement, at least for the short term, goes. So once again, guys, if I could encourage anything, it would be buy the dip of euro dollar, targeting highs and targeting breaking the highs. So that's what I'm looking for there. Questions, comments on euro dollar? Questions, comments, anything there? No? Let me know if there's anything I can help out with there. Oh, good question, Oscar. If the Fed decides to taper, will we have more downside movement? Yes, most likely. It really depends. If they do a really small taper, right now the Fed is buying up about $85 billion a month worth of MBS and other types of treasuries and bonds and securities and so on. So if they pull back from that 85 billion and maybe they trim off 5 billion, I don't know if the effort, I guess, the gesture will be enough to really cause a huge dollar rally. So unless they do something kind of big, like cut it by half, then I don't really know how much dollar rallying we're going to get. I think we might end up with you know, a shorter term, smaller reaction, and then a run, you know, a run higher. Again, that's if they do the minimal stuff. If they do something a little bit bigger than everyone's expecting, right now there's a lot of speculation that they're going to do just something small. You know, taper by $5 billion a month, which would be pretty small. And I don't really expect much of a reaction to that because I think that's already slightly priced into the market as well. So I'd like to see something big, and if we do, then we could see some huge movements because the euro's at some pretty interesting highs. This would be an okay area for this to reverse, and likewise the pound dollar has reached some pretty big levels, and it'd be a good area for it to reverse. But again, we're gonna just have to kind of see what they do. So a lot of this is going to depend. These levels are all important, and then if some of these trades don't play out and give us entries before Wednesday, then we're just going to have to kind of wait until the Fed news comes out and gives us, you know, a little more. So very good question, Oscar. Very good question. So pound dollar, talking about this pound dollar here, this is kind of interesting. The pound dollar is giving us kind of a typical technical setup here, which it's almost like a bull flag, really. We've had this big run up, and then we're starting to see this retracement right here. So one thing that I'm interested in, this is kind of a longer term deal, one of the things I'm interested in is breaking the highs of this week, which would kind of get us out of that semi-quasi choppy looking bull flag pattern. And so the highs of the week right there, which is also where the pound dollar has tested the 200 moving average, is just about 163.50. It's just 163.49. So we're going to call that 163.50. And if we can break above that, then this turns into a super good, super interesting trade. Pound dollar, I'm kind of at a little bit of an interesting wait and see on this one because we had this high right here and we pushed above it and hit about 164.30, and we pulled back, and then we made this new high here about 164.65, and then it's pulling back, and but it's actually, you know, if we look at kind of just the typical price movement here, we've seen a nice bottom. It's run up, consolidated, run up, and it's consolidating. So we could have one more run up that's enough to kind of spook all the traders out and get everyone out of this. So remember, pound dollar has a missed weekly pivot down here, which is at 160.50. That is currently 250 pips below current market price. And then we have some stuff way back here at 156, about 156.10, 156.12. That's way back here. This is now, you know, several weeks back, a couple of months back, and that turns into an interesting target. So we're just looking for, basically we're looking for one more push higher on this pound dollar before we start looking to sell the rallies. So I don't know if the pound is going to have quite as much rally potential as the euro, at least for the moment. So that's kind of where I am on this pair. So again, the opportunity would be by the break of the weekly high. We're only 50 pips away from that. So by the break of 163.50, targeting 164.50 probably, and even potentially beyond. But that's kind of what I'm looking for. So if this is in fact a big bull flag on the daily chart, then that's going to be our entry right there, 163.50. Now you can see here at about 162.90, it's really held on. There's a lot of long wicks down there at that 162.90. So this is where a short-term trade comes in. If we break that 162.90, we could make it into the Friday low, which is about 162.60. So there's 25 to 30 pips right there at the break of 162.90. So a very short-term trade at the break of 162.90 to just trade those Friday lows. Again, 25 to 30 pips. Break of 163.50 on pound dollar. Let's look to target at least 100 pips. So that's kind of the short and medium term stuff that I'm looking for on this pound dollar. And one of the reasons I like this 162.90 as well, you know, besides just trading to that very next support level, as you guys know, I love Friday highs and Friday lows. But the other thing that I love is that the pound dollar has gone a good little distance without touching the 200 moving average. And so if we do get a break, how long has it been since we've touched that guy? About 144-hour candles. So if we do get a break of this 162.90, there is the potential of running all the way to that 200 moving average, which then turns out to be about a 50 pip trade. So there's 25 to 50 pips on a break of 162.90, and hopefully 100 pips on a break of 163.50. Questions, comments, guys? Questions, comments on that one? Let me know. Pound dollar, some good stuff there. Aussie dollar is, as you guys know, the Aussie has just been getting hammered and hammered and hammered, and it is a favorite for some coming trades. We know we have now 3 missed weekly pivots, consecutive missed weekly pivots. We have plenty of missed daily pivots. Actually, that one isn't one. This one still is, and we have some that go back a couple of weeks. So the Aussie dollar is super interesting. I'm really interested in this Aussie dollar. Now, on short-term trading side of things, there should be, I'm not ready to get too bullish Aussie dollar yet, but I'm looking for a break. We have a perfect little technical double top right here at 89.70. So right at about 89.70, a break, buy the break of that, and let's target, of course, the weekly pivot point, the 200 moving average, kind of these two areas. So we have a very similar thing, a 25 to 50 pip trade at the break of 89.70. So be looking for that. Be ready to trade that 89.70 break. That's going to be a short-term little day trade. Nothing too crazy, nothing too out of the ordinary. 25 to 50 pips at the break of 89.70. But what is the bigger picture that we have going on with this Aussie dollar? We've had a huge head and shoulders pattern. This thing is running down, it's breaking lows, and it's now coming into some of this bigger support here, which is 88.45. 88.45. Now, the Aussie dollar might just be headed right through that. You never know. It could be plowing through some of those levels. You can see that this 88.45 is the low of 2012 so far. And that's also been the lowest point that the Aussie dollar has been in about 3 years. But then if we go back to 2010, we have a low of 80.55. 80.55. So we could be headed into some of that. I'm not going to put it past the Aussie dollar, but we could very likely be headed into some of those much bigger levels. So I'm still, at least at this point, I'm still in sell the rallies on Aussie dollar. And sell the breaks as well, but let's buy and sell the breaks. But for the moment, let's look at 89.70. Let's buy that break up into the weekly pivot point and into the 200 moving average, and then I'm just going to be watching and looking for some areas that we can start throwing on some sell the rally moves. Now remember, on this move down here, if we look at our Fibonacci levels, we can see that that level right there perfectly overlaps. That 89.70 is the 23% fib, and we know when we cross that 23% fib, we have an excellent chance of making it to the 38, and that 38 happens to be right between the weekly pivot and the 200 moving average. So we'll target at least the 90.10 area, 90.10 on Aussie dollar, but ultimately I'd like to see it get up to that daily, or to that 200 moving average, which is around 90.25. So break 89.70, target 90.25, maybe a tiny bit less, but we'll see how that goes. Then we'll look for to these pivot levels to start selling the Aussie, the rally of the Aussie, and continuing on down. I definitely like when 200 moving averages overlap like the 50, the 38, and 50% fib levels, and you can see about 90. The 50% fib from this recent run is 90.37, and we've got the 200 moving average in there. So we'll be looking for that. But for the short term, sell the break of the low if we don't get any kind of retracement. We've got a nice little trend line here in the works, but we'll hang on to that for just a moment. But if we get a break of 89, about 89.10, we're probably headed into 88.50 pretty easily. And likewise, a break of 89.70, we should be headed up into the 90.10, 90.15 area on Aussie dollar. So some short term and then some longer term stuff. But I could see 88.50 getting broken. So we'll see how that goes. Again, so much of this is going to depend on what we have happening with the Fed news on Wednesday. So that's going to be a big deal. Not really looking at too much on too many of the yen pairs. Aussie yen's a little choppy and crazy, so I'm not doing much there. Pound yen's a little choppy, but it is getting kind of interesting. The pound yen has just run up like crazy over the last month. It's just, I mean, it's rallied like a wild animal. And now we're starting to get some of this zigzag consolidation. And this gives us a little bit of room for a move lower. So I'm keeping an eye on that. Remember that this pound yen has got... Good grief, that's a nice little beep there. The pound yen has got missed weekly pivots like crazy going all the way down here. And so those missed weekly pivots and missed daily pivots make this, it's starting to turn into a very interesting possible reversal trade. So there's going to be more coming on that, but it's kind of stalled out here at about the 170 level. It's just been banging its head against 170 and hasn't done a lot there. I'm not convinced that that's a top, but I am very, very interested in some big retracement on the pound yen. We're going to be watching that very closely and looking for some of those fantastic moves that are coming up. One thing that we are watching here is the pound yen has absolutely stalled out on this huge move from the high of 2007 all the way to the lows, which we've kind of double bottomed nicely, which is a huge movement. We've retraced nicely into the 38% fib with not a lot of pullback, just straight up and consolidation and upward movement. So this 170 could be a spot to start looking for some pullback on the pound yen. I know we're about 200 pips off that 170, but there's plenty of room to go on this one. So I'll have more on this coming this week. I'll send out some charts and we'll do a daily video on it. I'm not ready to do anything yet, but it is getting pretty interesting. And same kind of situation with the euro yen, but I'm a lot less interested in the euro yen right now than I am in the pound yen. I think the pound yen has a much better trading opportunity. But we do have similar situations where we've just had a strong trend, and we've got some missed pivots on the euro yen. You can see 530 pips back there. So there's starting to be some pretty good yen opportunities. So we'll have more coming on that. I'm just looking for some of the trades that can be a little more immediate that we can get into sooner than later. Dollar CAD, I talked about buying the dollar CAD dip, and that one made a nice little run up, and then it's pulled back and it's kind of flat again. It's the dollar CAD seems to be stalling out. Probably what I'll be doing on this pair is waiting definitely for the news, the Fed news on Wednesday. There's just not a ton going on with this one. It's had a bit of movement, but it's still really consolidated. It hasn't really made any progress over the last 2 or 3 weeks. It's up 50 or 60 pips, down 50 or 60 pips, and it's just ultimately ending sideways. So I'm holding out on that CAD for just a little bit more, but I think we do have some great trades coming up there. In a quick look before we go to the Euro Aussie, quick look here at dollar yen. So we talked about this dollar yen, and we talked about 103.75 being a very interesting level for a potential reversal, because that puts us into a big double top here. That's a huge double top. And remember, when we have these kinds of things, this is a weekly chart, and we've had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 positive weeks in a row on the dollar yen. Now that's not unheard of, but that's definitely on the higher end. We had lots of positive weeks at the end of last year and the first part of this year, but that big double top right there seems to be holding pretty well. And the dollar yen, just like all the yen pairs, has some missed pivots. At this point, it's only 200 and change pips away, but we've got some missed daily and weekly pivots. So I'm going to be watching the dollar yen very, very closely as we get into the week, and especially as we get into Wednesday with the FOMC news. So we're going to keep a close eye on that dollar yen and look for possible opportunities to see if we can sell maybe a triple top here, or a third, kind of a third attempt at that high. But on the weekly chart, we've already had a nice huge double top, and so I'd like to see if we can get some opportunities to trade some of that retracement. So we'll be watching that pretty closely this week as well. So yen pairs are still developing. We're not doing much with those, but euro dollar, pound dollar, Aussie dollar pairs give us a few more short-term opportunities. And then we're watching this Euro Aussie. We have a long-term trade here. Those that were able to hedge are hedged. Those that aren't are out. And we're looking at what this Euro Aussie might have in store for us. Remember some of the big aspects of this Euro Aussie. This is a big kind of a bullish flag that we had here. It played out, you know, gave us a little spike up, and then it's just kind of consolidating again. So what I'm doing on this Euro Aussie is I'm watching really closely, because this is turning into a super interesting kind of a setup here. I'm watching closely as we bounce around this 154.30. We had a big missed weekly pivot that was back like a year or two ago, 154. 40, 50 area, so we took that one out. I think it was 154.40. So I think we've taken that out, and we've kind of run along that whole area. But now we're encountering some pretty good resistance up here. We've got another missed weekly pivot this week, which is fantastic, because that just adds to more and more pressure, and that's about 85 pips away. We're probably seeing a little bit of news from the meeting minutes from Central Bank in Australia. But let's watch for the break of this high, 154.30. Above that, this you know, has had a pretty good bull flag, some good consolidation, and we could see a break of that 154.30. So, you know, as a short-term opportunity, look to buy the break of that 154.30, and then we're going to keep our eye on kind of the bigger, longer-term picture, which is Euro Aussie making its way back down to these missed weekly pivots and these missed weekly pivots and all these guys. Right now our further close by missed weekly pivot is 1175 pips away, and the next one is 700 pips away, and then we've got this guy that's about 70 or 80 pips away. So I'm just stocking this Euro Aussie, but let's look for opportunities to buy that break. There could be some good chances there, but we're ultimately looking for the big run, the big trade, which is selling the rally and trading back towards some of those missed pivots that are now a couple of weeks overdue. So we're looking at all of that, and that's kind of where we are in the market. So again, this is kind of an overview. I want to make sure that everyone gets a good idea of some of the bigger picture things that I'm looking at, along with a couple of short-term entries. And then as we continue on, this week I will be updating with daily videos, and I'll be updating on Twitter and so on with you know, kind of follow-ups on how these setups are looking, how they're going, what's happening, so on. So I'm going to get this video recording uploaded and formatted, and I'll post it and I'll send it around to everyone. You'll get it in your inbox, and you'll see it on Twitter as well, and on the website. And then I'll take any questions, any comments, any pairs anyone wants to talk about. Just send them on over. Let's discuss.